Here's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, the July.
1, 2, 3, set, go.
Hello and welcome to the Power Chord Hour podcast, episode 3. I am your host, Anthony Merchant, welcoming you to the show and thanking you so much for checking us out. You know, we are still a very, very new podcast and still kind of getting our voice and getting this thing figured out. So we are very thankful to have you here, appreciate the support, and if you like what you hear, tell your friends. And if you've not checked out the first 2 episodes, go check them out. We got an intro for you as well as a best of 2019. Those were the first 2 episodes. And tonight we got a little bit of everything for you. Tonight I got music news for you. Going to let you know about the albums that have been released in January. We don't have tons, but we definitely have some that you should go check out. I got some songs to play for you, some new music, as well as a few old songs in our segment, which I'm excited to start doing on the show, is the Power Chord Hour Best Songs You've Never Heard block, and a couple obscure songs from bands that you should know that you probably don't know just because, you know, they never really got their due. So we're going to try to give them their due on here. But, you know, just a whole bunch on the Power Chord Hour podcast, and I'm really excited to, continue doing this and see where we go. I have some really cool things lined up with some really rad guests, and I think it's just going to keep getting better and better from here. And also later on in the show, it is a older one, but it is a very good one. I'm going to have an interview for you that I did with James Alex of Beach Slang back in 2017 for the 7th anniversary of Alex Chilton's passing. We talked all about Big Star for a couple minutes, so I'm going to play that for you a little later on, considering Beach Slang just put out a new record and first one in quite a while. And, you know, it's crazy because, you know, speaking of Beach Slang, it's funny. I feel like about 2 years is the threshold for a band, in between albums, where people are like, okay, it's like you might get people like, oh, when's the next album? You know, like maybe a year after your album was released. But I think overall people aren't too antsy. But I feel like most people would agree with this. Like 2 years is like kind of the, the in-between where bands can have of touring and promoting on a record and then recording and putting another one out. And it's kind of funny because, with this album, this new Beach Slang record, it's like when it came out a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about it. And, their last album, A Loud Bash of Teenage Feelings, that came out back in 2016. And it's like, wow, like 4 years, like you really... it's insane, but it's like that can do a lot to a band. And it seems like they're still in a good place. Like they're still, people are still interested, and they've got a lot of press for the new album and, a lot of eyes on it, which is really cool. They definitely deserve it. But it's like sometimes that can be detrimental to your career. It's funny. There's some bands who, if you go away for too long, people will forget you. Sometimes it works in your favor, and it's like you break up and you get bigger when you reunite. Like My Chemical Romance is a great example of this as well. Like they are a band who, obviously, I'm sure all of you know. It's been huge news, but, obviously reunited. And they've played, I think, only one show so far, but they have a bunch of shows announced for this year. But it's like, if you remember, like I remember when that band broke up. I remember the night they broke up. And, I remember it being on like absolutepunk.com like really late at night. Like I think they announced it like 11 o'clock at night, like kind of out of nowhere. I almost want to say it was like a Friday night. And then, surely, maybe 10, 20 minutes later, it was on absolutepunk.com or .net, I believe, absolutepunk.net, which no longer exists. But I really did enjoy quite a bit. But anyway, when they broke up, they weren't playing huge places. Like I remember like one of the last times they played Cleveland, like on a headlining show, they were playing House of Blues, and it sold out, but the cap there is still like 800 or 900 people. So they weren't playing like people kind of forget that they weren't playing arenas. And I guess one of their last tours would have been the 2011 Honda Civic tour with Blink-182, but they were opening for Blink-182, and they weren't. It really wasn't a co-headliner. They played, I believe, for probably a good 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, but Blink-182 still played like at least half hour, 45 minutes more, and it was definitely not a co-headliner. So it's just interesting. Like, I mean, and they had their time, don't get me wrong. I mean, during the Black Parade and all that, I think there's definitely a time where they were playing arenas, but it's like people kind of forget, you think of them as now because they've come back and it's just so much, there's so much like press around it and like everyone's covering it. It's not like a thing where just, like alternative publications like Alt Press are talking about or something. It's like you actually see it in like news outlets and stuff. And it's just kind of crazy because it's like I'm sure other people remember this too, but it's like, it's funny because it's just like, and I have no problem with it. It's great that they have all this attention again, but it's like, you just remember when they broke up, it's like, no one really seemed to care, to be honest. Like outside of the fans, it's like their last album didn't do super well. I don't think the fans loved it. The shows, like, I think they were doing so-so, but it's like the band was not firing on all cylinders. And it's like, sometimes when you break up like that, it ends up in your benefit. You become huge. I mean, there's tons of other bands like that too. Let's look at, Jawbreaker, one of my favorite bands. I'm broadcasting right now. I'm talking to you, or should I say podcasting? I'm podcasting with you right now in a Jawbreaker beanie. And I mean, that's a band who, now I had never heard them, until like 2013, which, I was like 6 when they broke up. I might not even have been 6. I might have been like 4 or 5 when they broke up. So it's like, obviously I couldn't have listened to them when they were around the first time, but it's like, that's a band that really, I think was kind of, they were known around in the punk rock scene, but was not a mainstream band. And that obviously, they signed to a major label for Dear You and all hell broke loose. And ended up, it wasn't, I think it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I think there was a lot of tension and stuff before Dear You, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, I don't think all things were super peachy before the whole major label debacle, but that was kind of like if there was any reason to stay together, like they didn't want to stay together, and if there was a reason to, it was no longer there. But it's like, you look at a band like that and it's amazing. Sure, they're not playing like arenas now, but it's like they're playing huge places. I've seen them 3 times now on the reunion tours. Headlining Riot Fest 2017, and then at the I believe may have been the Hawthorne Theater in Portland, and I may be wrong. I think that is a venue there. Oh, no, I believe the Crystal Ballroom in Portland, I saw them. They did 2 nights in 2018, and those shows are probably like 1,000 people at each show at least, and it's like, that's pretty damn big for Jawbreaker. It's like, I wasn't around the first time around when they were a band, but it's like, when you look at video and stuff, it's absolutely, like they play, they're playing like Gilman Street and a lot of really small places. So, it's just absolutely crazy to see them get back together and, just get huge. So it's like, sometimes it's funny, but it's like breaking up is sometimes the best thing for your career. And I've talked to JT Woodruff of Hawthorne Heights. He's the front man. Really, really good dude. All the guys in that band are great. And we've talked before, and he's joked about it, but it's like it's a half joke, half kind of serious thing. But it's like he said, it's like Hawthorne Heights would be so much bigger if we broke up. And they've never broken up, and it's like you know what I mean? It's like, it's funny, but it's like he's not entirely wrong. Like, a lot of times you break up and all of a sudden people care again, you know what I mean? And it's not to say that people don't care about Hawthorne Heights, but it's like, maybe he's right. Maybe if they broke up and got back together at this point, it's like maybe they'd be playing arenas right now. It's like, you never know. But I just think it's crazy how that works. And then other times, I think it can work the other way, where you go away for a long time and people just don't care when you get back. It can be a very dangerous thing. There's certain bands, like this is a band that I love, and no disrespect by this at all. They're really like probably my favorite band of the last decade, but it's like, I always think about the band Mixtapes because, I loved that band. They were around for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, not super long. And it's funny to think now they've probably been broken up longer than they were together. But, it's insane to think about that. But what I often wonder about them is, like, if they got back together, would a lot of people be there? Because it's like, they were starting to get some heat before they broke up, but they were never huge. Like, I saw them play tons of times, and it's like there are a lot of times where I saw them play to, like, a handful of people. And, well, like I said, I'm not like talking trash or anything like that. Really, like, I love that band. Like, probably my favorite band to come out of the 2010s. And, I always wish they would have been bigger. But just what I'm saying is, a band like that who's now been broken up since 2014, and they did play like I think one reunion show at Fest a couple years ago, but that's also like, kind of their stomping grounds. But it's like I do wonder if a band like that could get back together and, if there would be even enough interest to play, small venues around the country. Like, I just wonder that, you know what I mean? And I would hope they do. It's like, I'd love to see your Mixtapes reunion. But there are certain bands you wonder that. Another one, and it's funny, I wasn't even thinking about it when I was talking about this, but a song I'm going to play you later for the Power Chord Hour Best Songs You've Never Heard music block is the Benjamins, a band that I love so much. And I've been playing on the radio show since the beginning now, on the Power Chord Hour. But I mean, they're another one where I've wondered this, and I've asked their bass player Benny this, and I don't remember what he said. I think he kind of said there's probably no interest, but I think there's also the modesty, and you know what I mean, of like, well, no one cares about my old band. But it's like, I do wonder a band like that as well, where it's like, could they get back together and pull in at least a couple hundred people, and like even like a 12-date, reunion tour, like just around the country. It's like, I wonder that, because like sometimes, these are bands who weren't huge before they broke up, but it's like I was saying, sometimes that momentum builds, you don't realize it, and you get back together and you're huge, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I always think that's interesting, and it came up recently because of the new Beach Slang, and it's like realizing that it had been 4 years in between. It's like, sometimes that can really hurt you, and I think they've been lucky. Like I said, I don't think it's really hurt them. I feel like there's a lot of eyes on the new record, and it is a good record, but it's like sometimes that can really, really hurt your career. But I would love to hear. I love to interact with people listening to the show. And, we can kind of maybe continue this on the next podcast if people write in. But it's like, what bands that have broken up, have you seen basically get bigger from breaking up? You know what I mean? Like, let me know some of the bands, like some of the biggest ones you can think of that, like, maybe weren't huge before they broke up and just got huge afterwards. I mean, I think The Replacements, my favorite band of all time. I mean, The Replacements are another great example of that, where, they had some mainstream success in the 80s, but it's like once they broke up was really when I think people started caring. And I think that's also part of the thing that pissed off Paul Westerberg and the rest of them, and rightfully so, that like when they were doing it, no one gave a shit. And then once they broke up, people, I mean, for one, they broke up and then the 90s started and everyone sounded like them. And it's kind of like that too, where it's like, well, when we were doing this 10 years ago, no one cared, and now they do. But, I mean, obviously they got to enjoy a arena. Yeah, they definitely did an arena tour for their reunion back. I was going to say a few years back. We're probably talking like 5 years ago now, if not more. But that's one where I think they were probably playing the biggest shows they had ever played of their career. And I think that's awesome. Like, same with Jawbreaker, where it's like, it's cool where you didn't get what you deserved the first time around. You didn't get your credit. And now you're getting your credit. It's long overdue, but you are getting your credit. So let me know, powerchordhour@gmail.com. Hit me up. Like, what bands can you think of? And I mean, the other way too, the other way around. What bands like kind of broke up, and got back together, or, didn't even break up, but took a lot of time in between albums, kind of, went on hiatus or whatever, and just didn't seem to ever bounce back from it, which is a sad thing, but it definitely happens. Right now, we're going to play some new music for you. Is the beginning of the year. And I don't think there's tons and tons of music normally released in January, but we did get a few cool albums. So I'm going to play you some stuff right now. And this first one is from a band called Northbound. They've been around for a little bit, but this is one of their first albums. Not their first, but one of their first albums. It is called Soul Kiss, and it's really, really good. This is the first that I heard of them, and I'm really liking it. It's funny because I've seen it in more than one YouTube comment, or in multiple comment sections on their YouTube page on different songs, but people going like, this is a heavier modern baseball. And I really like that comparison because I think it's true. I think there's definitely a vibe to it that's kind of similar to modern baseball, but it's more of those heavier kind of pop punk aspects of modern baseball, kind of like Your Graduation and some of the songs that are more like that. And which I always like, because really I've the funniest thing with modern baseball, and I like them enough. I mean, they're not my favorite band, but I definitely like them. But it's like Your Graduation, I still think, while it is a strong single, it's one of the most misleading singles of like any like pop punk band has ever put out, because it's just the rest of the album doesn't particularly sound like that. Like, to me, I hear that song and I go, the first time I heard it, I'm like, oh my God, which I had heard them before, because I only live though. I saw them open for mixtapes in like 2013. So I saw them maybe like 6 months before they put out, I believe it's, oh man, You're Gonna Miss It All, that album, their second record, You're Gonna Miss It All, and probably their biggest record as well, and my favorite, I'd say. But, I heard them live before that, and then hearing Your Graduation, the studio version, when they put it out, it was like, wow, this sounds so different from when I saw them live. And then when I got the album, it didn't sound, you know what I mean? Like, the album sounded more like what they sounded like live. And, I mean, I'm not even saying that as a bad thing, but I'm like, oh, this isn't what I expected the rest of the album to be like. I was expecting basically a more straight-up pop-punk record instead of, like, kind of pop punk, but more, like kind of heavily influenced by like the Weaker Thans, and, kind of has like that, a little bit of like Hold Steady, kind of the weird phrasing. And, they definitely didn't do just straight up pop punk. I mean, I think there were pop punk elements of that band, but, I just think that song, which is just, a straight up pop punk jam, basically, is just, when you hear that for the first time, you don't hear the rest of the record, you kind of expect that, and I don't think the rest of the record sounds like that. But this is, Northbound is kind of like a heavier modern baseball, so if you like that heavier side of modern baseball, I think you'll like this band. And this song is called Bad Blood, off their new album Soul Kiss, right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast.
I'm sick to my stomach, you've got me dying in pain. I think you've actually done it, reduced me down to my name. And my state's so ordinary, you're kissing my neck, I wish you'd care for my brain. You say you wanna leave, but will you actually do it? You think I'm writing it bad, but you know I wouldn't. It's the last chance, last day out to the cemetery gates, where all it does is rain, rain. My knuckles are bloody, beating down to the core. I think I finally found just what I'm looking for. And your heart's so complicated, you're kicking me out. I wish you'd answer my call. You say you wanna leave, but will you actually do it? You think I'm writing it bad, but you know I wouldn't. It's the last chance, last day out to the cemetery gates. You say you're gonna leave, but who the hell are you kidding? You wanna blame it on me, cause we know I'm the villain. And it's the last chance, last day out to the cemetery gates, where all it does is rain, rain. Just take me away, as if it wasn't enough, you've got me falling in love with your bad days and all my past mistakes are blowing up in my face. So tell me, who is to blame for everything and every day? You say you wanna leave, but will you actually do it? You think I'm writing in bad blood, you know I wouldn't. It's the last chance, last day out to the cemetery gates.
It's the green, green grass of hope. The billboard smiling again as the sun sets low. He's a man with a plan and a girl named Joe. She's a funny Valentine, driving up to the east cause the west was won. And the golden line will come the soul. This is how it always goes. The ones in the middle are the ones that won't get old. Save it from another year as the night becomes today. And the less you take a break, the more you know it's never too late to collage me now. They're the ones that won't get hurt, 'cause once you're
Right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast, that was Dog Party with a cover of the Beatles' I Feel Fine off their new EP, Dog Party Sings the Beatles. Before that was Gov Hex, a band coming to you from Belgium, and that song was called Collage. Go check them out. They are a brand new band, and like I said, out of Belgium, and they're on all social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Their music is on Bandcamp and Spotify, all those good places that you already know about, that you're already on. So go check them out there. They are Gov Hex. Give them some support. Let them know that you heard about them on the Power Chord Hour podcast. And opening up that block of new music for you, that was Northbound with Bad Blood off their new album, Soul Kiss. Some other albums you should check out that were released this January. We got Anti-Flag with 2020 Vision, Criteria with Years, and that is their first album in years. The Drowns with Under Tension, that is out now. Band-Aid Brigade with I'm Separate, and that features members of Pears, Armchair Martian, and the Gamuts, so you know it's good. And also Beach Slang with the Deadbeat Band of Heartbreak City, and a really, really good album. I mean, obviously, I was talking about it in the beginning of the show, and I was talking about it on the Power Chord Hour radio show last week when I was playing the opener off this album. And like I was saying, it's like I really like it, and there's some really strong songs on it. But it's like, I think what's holding it back is like, you know, maybe like 4 songs. Like it's like a 10 or 11 song album, and I'd say like 7 songs are really good. And then, like, I think part of the problem is they still do some of those elements of quiet slang on it that, you know, I don't hate, but my thing that I always say about them is they are such a great, just loud rock band that the quiet elements, it's like, I mean, it's okay, but it's like they sound better electric. You know, they're so good electric that it's like, that's how I want to hear them. Which, don't get me wrong, it's a very, you know, straight up rock record, but it's like there are a couple ballads on there, I will call them. And, you know, I don't think they're terrible songs, but I think they kind of kill the vibe of the record. You know, I don't like their placement. It's kind of like with Alkaline Trio on God Damn It, where it's like I really like that album, but it's like Enjoy Your Day comes out of nowhere, and I feel like that kills the flow of the record. And I think there's a couple songs on this one that it does that. But it's like outside of that, really, really strong album. You know, we maybe have waited 4 years, but I'd say it was well worth it. There's a lot of great songs on this. I can't wait to hear them play live. And while I have not interviewed James Alex yet for this record, I did interview him about 3 years ago now. It's crazy to think we're coming up about 3 years. I interviewed him in March of 2017. And just for a couple minutes on Alex Chilton, because I was doing an episode, we were broadcasting that night on the 7th anniversary of Alex Chilton's passing. It ended up being a Friday night, which is the night that the show airs. So I thought, why not talk to some people about Big Star? And he was one of them. The other guest that I had on the show that night was David Julian Leonard, who actually knew Alex Chilton. So I got to talk to a friend of Chilton who was working on and is currently still working on and still plans on putting it out. And looks like there's been some progress lately, but he's putting out a documentary on Alex Chilton. And I believe, he did a Kickstarter. I forgot. There's been, it's been a few years now since I talked to him on here, but he's done a Kickstarter since then, got some crowdfunding for it, and I think we're going to see something very soon. But anyway, I was talking to James Alex. He never knew Alex Chilton, but I was talking to him. Beach Slang is so heavily influenced by Big Star, and I mean, James Alex famously walks around a lot in a Big Star hoodie, so it's like it was a no-brainer to talk to him, and it was so rad to hear like how he heard about Big Star and what he thought about Alex Chilton, what Alex Chilton meant to his music, and just a sweet guy, and it was so fun to talk to him. And this one's a few years old, and I still really like it because I love hearing him talk about Alex Chilton. But for me personally, it's so funny because this was one of the first interviews I ever did, and it's kind of, I feel like most people are this way with anything that they do, but it's kind of hard for me to listen because I'm like, oh man, that doesn't even sound like me, But it's just crazy how time flies by. I'm like, yeah, this was from 3 years ago, and A Loud Bash of Teenage Feelings had been out like probably 4 or 5 months at this point when I talked to him, and I cut some of it out, but they were playing with Minus the Bear at the time on a tour. and we're coming near Jamestown, New York, where we do the radio show. They're playing up in Buffalo. So, we were talking about that as well. But it was just a real quick interview, and it's something like I wish I would have talked to him longer. But the reason it's so short is just there was so much to fit in that episode, and having multiple interviews and stuff, I really wanted to keep it to like 3 or 4 questions. So it's like, it kind of like I think there's some really neat stuff in here to hear about if you're a Big Star, Alex Chilton, or Beach Slang fan, but it's like I wish I could have talked to him even longer. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I just scratched the surface on this one, but I hope you enjoy it. So right now, here's my interview with James Alex of Beach Slang from back in March of 2017 right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. Obviously, for this episode, we are celebrating the life, legacy, and music of Alex Chilton on the 7th anniversary of his passing. So right away, do you remember the first time you ever heard Big Star?
Oh, clearly, man. The first real band I was ever in, we were playing CMJ once, and we played a showcase with Super Drag, who are also from Memphis. And I remember them saying, John said, we're going to play some Big Star, and they broke into September Girls. And I was like, what is this? Yeah. So it was like, as soon as I heard that, I talked to John after the show, and it was like, I started just getting my hands on everything they ever did. But that was it. So the first time I heard them was the cover, ran out, got like everything. The first thing I got was #1 record. And when I heard 13, I was just like, I think I just heard the greatest song. It was it. Yeah. But yeah, so the first time I got turned on to them through Super Drag, and then, I just started buying everything I could get my hands.
That's awesome. I can't think of a better band. I'd love to hear them cover that. That'd be a great band to do that justice. For you personally, what is it about Chilton's music that draws you to it?
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing about Chilton, it's his music and him, right? It's just this, like, it hits on so many levels for me. It's like his voice is just otherworldly, sort of, in its, like, beauty, And he just had this thing about him that was like, I don't know, I suppose the way he valued being an artist more so than like, he was just very into sort of pushing and evolving and seeing, like expanding himself. He sort of valued the things he created in like a very pure way. And I don't know, I suppose that really resonates with me. It was sort of like, if success came, that was sort of a neat sort of byproduct of it, but it wasn't the sort of drive of it all.
And also, I mean, on top of that, because it's pretty safe to say that his music influences your music. I mean, what are some of the parts of his songwriting? I mean, really breaking it down as a songwriter, what about him influences your music?
Oh, sure, man. Well, yeah, I mean, he uses all these like sort of deep chord voices, and there's this beautiful thing about how he lays melody and then harmony. You know what I mean? It's not so much about like, albeit some of those songs are like complicated in their voicing and stuff, but it's like, it's that same thing that turns me on about a lot of the stuff that I love coming up. It's less about being virtuoso-y about things, and it's about how do you frame a really genuine, charging feeling, and it was just something about the way he did that I, look, man, I'm going to strive to sort of emulate. I'm never going to catch it, but like, there was just something really beautiful and pure and almost simple about it. I like that sort of earnest sort of thing, and I think I try to do that almost where it's like, that feeling of like, it's him playing these songs sitting next to you, like on a bed or something, right? I like that sort of intimate sort of delivery.
And also, I asked you for one of your favorite Big Star songs, so we could play it after we talk to you, and you chose Take Care. Do you want to tell us why this one is one of your favorites?
Yeah, it's almost like this infinite sort of lullaby that sort of drowns me out. I don't know. There's like, when I talk about that sort of intimate, sort of honest delivery that he sort of has, I don't know, I feel like that's captured so beautiful. Like, I don't think there's been a time I haven't had, like, the hairs on my arms have stuck. So I don't see that ending. I think it's just a love food for. Hey, this is James Alex of Beach Slang, and you're listening to the Power Chord Hour.
That was my interview with James Alex of the band Beach Slang from back in March of 2017 right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. And go check out the band's brand new album, The Deadbeat Bang of Heartbreak City, is out now on Bridge 9 Records. Definitely worth going and checking out. And if you want to hear that interview again or any of the other interviews that I have done on the Power Chord Hour radio show, They are on our YouTube page at Power Chord Radio. You'll find them all there, so go check that out and subscribe if you would. And also go check us out on all social media. We're at Power Chord Radio on Twitter, Instagram, on Facebook, or on Spotify. I put up the playlist of the songs that I play every week on the Power Chord Hour radio show that airs every Friday night. I put all the songs that I play on there in a Spotify playlist every week, so you can check out what I'm playing if you missed the radio show. And I've been putting up, it's really cool, I've been putting up some of my favorite songs of the last decade, and each week I'm releasing a new one. 2010 and 2011 are both up, and no kind of countdown or anything, not like my top 10 or anything like that, just some of my favorite songs of those years. So I think it's it kind of makes you nostalgic because you forget how long ago, including the early 2010s were. So it's like, like including things like 2011, you go, wow, that stuff came out 9 years ago. You forget how long ago it was. So it's kind of cool to go back and you kind of forget, what years things were released and stuff. So that's all on our Spotify page. So you can follow us there and go check that out. You can also listen to the Power Chord Hour podcast on our Spotify. Or on Spotify, I should say. And you can also, if you're not listening to this on YouTube right now, you can listen to the podcast on our YouTube page as well. And shout out to you if you are currently listening to this on our YouTube page. But yeah, go check us out. We're on all the social media, all that good stuff. And email me, powerchordhour@gmail.com. I have some free Power Chord Hour t-shirts and guitar picks to give away, so just hit me up. I'll send you some for free. And let me know, after hearing that interview, and I have some more lined up coming very soon, but who would you like to hear me interview? Who should I reach out and try to have on the show? I'd love to hear what the, anyone listening who you think I should talk to next, let me know, and maybe I'll reach out to them, and who knows, maybe we'll get them on the show thanks to you, so let me know. And yeah, we're going to keep moving on. I got some music news for you for the month of January. This is some of my favorite music news that I got for you. To kick it off, Against Me have recorded 17 demos in just 5 days, according to a recent tweet by Laura Jane Grace. And according to Laura Jane Grace, the band is recording in Michigan and should have a new record out later this year. No release date, but I'm going to say if they're this far along in January, probably sometime in like the summer or fall. Probably not right away, but probably, I wouldn't say winter. It's probably not going to be 2 months, but I bet like another 5 or 6 months. And this is going to be the first album with bass player Andrew Seward since 2011's White Crosses, which would be really cool. I definitely think, White Crosses was kind of a different sound for them anyways as well, but it is interesting to see what this will sound like with Andrew back in the band, because I think he had quite a bit, you don't think about it, but I think he had a lot of what that Against Me sound was. He did basically all those background vocals and stuff. Those bass lines, did some great driving bass lines, and just really, really good, an integral part of Against Me. And it's not like they didn't put out good records without him, but I'm excited to see what they do with him again. I feel like maybe we'll get something kind of along those kind of, I don't know, I would love to hear more of new wave kind of stuff. I think they sound great polished like that. I know it's polarizing. Not everyone likes new wave. Even to this day, I think that album still pisses people off, some people, but obviously others think it's their greatest album. And I would probably say it's their greatest. I would say Axl Rose, Reinventing Axl Rose is my favorite. But if I'm going to go realistically, what's their best? What are the best, the production-wise, songwriting, the best lyrics, all that? I would say probably new wave. And, it'd be great to hear something like that again. And who knows, maybe we will. But I'm excited for anything. Their last album, and, I know I keep going back to it, bands who haven't released albums in a while, but they put out Shapeshift with me back in 2016. So we're going on 4 years now. And there's some good songs on that album, but I don't think it's the best Against Me record. I gotta say, some of their albums took a while for me to get into, but then when I did, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. White Crosses being one of them. The last one that Andrew was on. I didn't love it at first. I liked the first 2 songs on the record, and it took me a while. But once I listened to it enough, I'm like, oh my God, it just clicks, and it's I love this album. Whereas with Shapeshift with me, there's 4 or 5 really good songs, but I cannot tell you the last time I listened to that album front to back. It's just not a record I have to listen to front to back. If I put New Wave on and I start with the first song, I'm going to listen to the whole thing. It's just one of those records where it's all right, I'm not going to skip anything. I'm going to listen to this whole thing. Whereas I don't feel that way with the last Against Me record. But I'm really excited for this new one. any time we get new Against Me is a good thing. And the Laura Jane Grace and the Devouring Mothers album that came out last year, or actually I say last year, 2 years ago, that came out late 2018. Forgot it was 2020 there for a second. But that album was another one that was a grower on me, but I really, really like that record now. So, I mean, she's put out some really good music lately, so hopefully that bleeds into the new Against Me record, and it means we get some really good new Against Me music. Speaking of new music, Green Day have released a video for their new single, Oh Yeah. The song comes off their forthcoming record that will be out pretty damn soon, like the next, I think, week or so. But their new album, Father of All Motherfuckers, is going to be coming out on February 7th, so very, very soon, depending on when you're listening to this. It might already be out. And the band will be touring with Weezer, Fall Out Boy, and the Interrupters this summer. And, that's going to be a pretty cool tour. I do feel, though, like I would have been really, really stoked on that, I don't know, probably more stoked on it like 5 years ago than I am now. Because I really do like all those bands, but as far as like the recent stuff they put out, like some of the songs that Green Day's put out, like this one, Oh Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite stuff Green Day's ever done. I think to me, it's almost like a continuation of some of the stuff they're doing on Uno Dos Tres, and kind of the more rock and roll side, I would say, in like the pop punk side. And it's not bad, but it's not my favorite stuff. And, just as far as Fall Out Boy and Weezer go, neither of them have put out albums that I'm interested in quite a long time. I mean, there's albums in their back catalog that I absolutely love. I mean, I love the first couple Fall Out Boy records. I love the first couple Weezer records, and quite a few sprinkled in between. I really don't get that critical with Weezer until probably like Ratitude. And, and I actually really liked the Red album. Like, when that came out, I really, really liked it. And I don't listen to it a ton now, but I would still say that I consider it a good record. And, I'm not as critical with them, but, they just really haven't put out much that I like. So it's like, I look at that tour and I go, it's really cool, but then I also go, it's like, I really only want to hear the greatest hits from any of them because I know they're not going to be playing really deep cuts. I don't expect Fall Out Boy to go out there and play a bunch of Take This to Your Grave songs, or, anything like that, or Green Day to play like Dookie front to back, which they've been known to do that, but I just, on a tour like that, they probably won't. But, of all those bands, I mean, the Interrupters, I think, are the best current band. You know what I mean? Like, as far as still putting out the best music currently, the Interrupters are the best band on that tour, in my opinion. But, still going to be a good tour. All those bands I've seen live and all put on really good shows, including Green Day, or I should say especially Green Day. I mean, I think anyone will tell you that who's seen Green Day live. They really are one of the best live bands out there. I've seen them a couple times, and they never disappoint. So go check out that new album, Father of All Motherfuckers, and go check out that tour this summer. They will be coming around basically anywhere you live. If you live in the United States, they're probably coming around you. That's a pretty big tour, so go check that out. This is another one I am very excited for. Fat Records band The Bomb Pops have just released the first single off their upcoming record, Death in Venice Beach, and this song is called Notre Dame, and the album will be coming out on March 7th, or March 13th, I should say, so go check that out in a couple months here. But this song, Notre Dame, is now out, and there's also a video with it on their YouTube page. And there is definitely some heavy Alkaline Trio vibes to the lyrics and the music. I mean, not the first time that their music has kind of sounded like Alkaline Trio or influenced by Alkaline Trio, but this is definitely some heavily, and not even in a way where it sounds like, oh, they ripped off Alkaline Trio. I mean this in the best way possible. It's like it sounds like the Bomb Pops kind of doing an Alkaline Trio song. And I think it works really, really well. I mean, it's like, and Dear Beer was a good indication. I think Dear Beer was a really strong EP and was showing where they were going next. And this is like the strongest stuff they've put out yet. Like, I'm really, really stoked for this album. Like, they're one of my favorite like newer Fat Wreck bands. And they have been around for like a decade now, but it's like they're really coming into their own, I think, since signing to Fat Records. I think a lot of their old stuff, like on Red Scare, is good, but I think they really found their sound on Fear of Missing Out, their first Fat Wreck debut, I should say. So I've been excited to see what they've put out ever since, and I'm really excited for the new record. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be out very soon. Chicago band Sincere Engineer, another great band, recently released a cover of Tears for Fears' Everybody Wants to Rule the World. You definitely want to go check this out. It's a really good cover. And they also covered this at their New Year's Eve show in Denver with Against Me. That is a show I wish I would have been at. And also music news. This is a really cool one, too. I'm excited to read this. Bad Religion have announced an autobiography of the band. It is titled Do What You Want, The Story of Bad Religion. And that book will be out this August, so go check that out when it is out. And I can't wait to read it. I've read, I can't remember which one I read, but Greg Graffin has a few books out. And I read one, well over 10 years ago. I was still in high school when I read it. I was like in 11th or 12th grade. But it was really good. I mean, it was a lot more of like religion and science. But, it was interesting because he did sprinkle in Bad Religion stuff. And he made it work. I don't feel like he shoehorned it in. It wasn't like he was talking about like religion and then kind of like, try to shoehorn in like Bad Religion or like, oh, my band, my punk band with the Crossbuster logo. Like it works really well. So I'm sure this book is going to be well written. I mean, a band who's been around that long now. I mean, we're talking 40 years, I believe. This will be their 40th anniversary, and it coincides with the autobiography, why they're putting it out. But, I mean, a band around that many years, that many decades, and with as many lineups and stuff as they've had, it'll be very, very interesting. And I don't know if they'll have past members. I would imagine, because they're not a band, they definitely, they have a lot of lineup changes, but it's more of just being a band for 40 years. I don't think it's one of those things where some bands just have a huge revolving door of musicians and it's like they don't get along when they're gone. But I think Bad Religion's really like that because they've had guys come and go, and it's like the core of the dudes in that band have been around since the 80s. But either way, it'll be interesting if they get like Greg Hetson and stuff to talk about his time in the band. It'll be cool, actually, I think, if we hear from some other people in the band as well. So hopefully they do that, but we'll find out this summer, and I'm really excited for that book. And we got a few more things for you on this Power Chord Hour podcast episode. And right now, I have a few more songs for you, and we're going to do the Power Chord Hour podcast Best Songs You've Never Heard music block. And we're going to kick it off right now with a band from Buffalo, New York, who haven't been a band for probably 7 or 8 years now at least. They're a great pop-punk band called The Boy and His Machine, and this song is called Walls of Regret. And I first heard this band in 2010. I saw them open for Punchline at Mohawk Place in Buffalo. One of the best shows I think I've still ever seen at Mohawk Place. It was Punchline, The Boy and His Machines, The Swellers. Punchline and The Swellers just kind of playing a one-off. Fighting for First, another cool, now defunct Buffalo pop-punk band. And I believe, and Thrown Under the Bus, another band that is no longer together. It's crazy. Of that show, it was Punchline headlining, the Swellers kind of a co-headlining, but played right before Punchline, The Boy and His Machine, Fighting for First, and Thrown Under the Bus. And that is still one of the best shows I've ever seen there. Probably the best show, I should say. I mean, all those bands were so good. Like, a lot of times you go to a show, and, 3 of those 5 bands were local Buffalo bands. And it's like, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. It's just the truth with local bands. There's really good local bands, and sometimes bands are finding their voice. And, sometimes sitting through 3 local bands can be a bit much. But this was not the case. This ended up being 3 bands that I fell in love with that night, The Boy and His Machine obviously being one of them. But just bands blowing me away going, wow, Buffalo has a really strong local scene. And I remember taking that away from there. And it was also the first time I saw the Swellers live. They absolutely killed it. And Punchline are always great. And that's still one of the best shows I've ever seen them play. That's not too long after Paul rejoined Punchline. So they played a lot of action songs, which was not a bad thing. That was really cool to hear. But right now, I have The Boy and His Machine song for you. There's not a whole lot out there. They did put out a few EPs, and they did okay, actually, over in Japan, I believe it was. Like a few. It's funny, because, not a huge band, but they did get their EPs released in Japan with, I think, bonus tracks and stuff, and I think they had a little following over there, and definitely a nice following in Buffalo. I saw them play a few shows there, and they always had a nice crowd show up for them, singing along too, like really genuinely liking the band. A really strong local following, which is cool because not all bands can get that, and they gained a really good following. And I just think this is a great pop punk song. So right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast, we got the Boy and His Machine with Walls of Regret.
Been, and what have you done with them? We've lost all that we know, and forever's losing its red. Taking the light out of this room, and now begging for a way out. Whoa, breaking down the walls of regret. And I know that this could mean the end, 'cause scientists couldn't fix this mess. Scream oh, 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 oh. And these are the things I say to sink you. And never forget, this is who we are. This is who we are. But our time wasn't now. It wasn't now. Whoa, breaking down the walls of regret. Whoa, and I know that this could mean the end, 'cause scientists couldn't fix this mess. Scream oh, 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 oh. This could mean the end. Where have you been? Yeah. Breaking down the walls of regret. Whoa, and I know that this could mean the end, 'cause scientists couldn't fix this mess. Scream oh, 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 oh. Breaking down the walls of regret. Whoa, and I know that this could mean the end, 'cause scientists couldn't fix this mess. Scream oh, 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 oh. Breaking down the walls of regret. Whoa, and I know that this could mean the end, 'cause scientists couldn't fix this mess.
That was the Benjamins with Wonderful right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. And that was the Power Chord Hour Best Songs You've Never Heard block of music for you. And the Benjamins were a great, great band on Drive Through Records. One of the most, not even one of, probably the most underrated band on Drive Through Records. I mean, they had a modest little following, but not the following they deserved. I mean, The Art of Disappointment, one of the best things ever released on that label. And just a one and done. They put out The Art of Disappointment, and that's it. They did have an EP before that, and an EP that they put out back in 2013 or 14. First new music in years, not even years, I think like a decade. But yeah, not a whole lot out there. You can go check it out. They might have like 20 songs in existence, but a really, really good band. And before that was another great band who you may have never heard of before, but you should. That was the Boy and His Machine with Walls of Regret, and they were a great Buffalo pop punk band who broke up in the early 2010s. They were together for a few years. And probably the most notable member, right before they broke up, I think like the last year they were together, and I don't think they ever recorded music with them, but the drummer of the band Cute Is What We Aim For, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He played drums in Cute Is What We Aim For as well as A Stellar Life. He was playing with the Boy and His Machine. I saw him play with them. Last time I saw him play live, he was playing drums with them. So he played with them for a little bit, which is pretty cool. And I know the bass player of the Boy and His Machine has played with Cute Is What We Aim For on a lot of their reunion tours. I think he might currently be too. Anytime they go out and play, I think he's the guy playing bass for him. He's a good dude, Christian Adams. But yeah, really rad bands, the Benjamins and the Boy and His Machine. If you'd never heard them before, go check them out. Neither of them have a whole ton of music out there, so it's very easy. You can go check it out like in an afternoon. Go check out a couple EPs and an album or two, and you are all good to go, because that is all she wrote with their music, and which is too bad, but hey, at least we got some good music out of it. So that is going to be the Power Chord Hour podcast for this week. I want to thank you so much for checking us out. Like I said, this is only our third episode. I'm still kind of getting it figured out, what I want to do with the show, what I want to talk about on here, and hopefully you enjoyed what I talked about tonight, enjoyed the interview with James Alex at Beach Slang, enjoyed the new music I played you, the old music I played you, all of that. I just hope you enjoyed the podcast, and let me know what you thought of it. PowerChordHour@gmail.com. Hit me up, and I do have those Power Chord Hour t-shirts and guitar picks. I would love to send you one. And let me know what you're listening to as well. I like to expose people to new music, but that doesn't mean that I don't miss new music. So, let me know what you're checking out. Maybe you'll turn me on to something, and thus then after that, I can play it on here, and we will turn other people on to it, So hit me up on there. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. We're at Power Chord Radio on those things. And go check us out, give us a follow, and let me know what you're thinking of the show. Make sure you're subscribed to us. Give us a review if you would. I would appreciate that. We're just getting started out, so any support would be appreciated, and let your friends know about us. Word of mouth is a very strong way to get the word out there. So let people know about it. So until episode 4, you can always check out the Power Chord Hour radio show that we air every Friday night at 10 Eastern on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. And you can stream the station right on WRFALP.com, so you can listen from anywhere in the world, as well as the WRFA mobile app. You can go download that for your iPhone and listen on there. So you can listen to the radio show from anywhere in the world. Check us out there, and check out episode 4 of the Power Chord Hour podcast, dropping very, very soon. But until then, for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thank you very much for listening.